The #1 political streamer on Twitch, Hasan was watching the debate, reacting to the debate, giving opinions on the debate. I'm sure very insightful. And during that reaction, he started talking about January 6th because Tim Walz started talking about the storming of the Capitol, the attempt to overturn the election results with fraudulent electors. And he was talking about how the person next to him that he was debating, and I really wanted the cordiality on the last part of the debate to go away. There's something I desire of having a politics where you actually have to sit down and listen to some amount of policy. Not that this all was policy, a lot of it was still smear and nonsense, but there was much more policy. It was cordial enough so you can understand what people were saying. It didn't feel like a vibe of the person standing next to me is the enemy. And it makes sense because Tim Walz's brand is kind of Midwest nice, and JD Vance is also from the Midwest, and he needs to balance out Trump to some extent. You do not need on the national stage to double up on the Trump. So it kind of makes sense strategically for him to try to present a friendlier face of the MAGA movement, even if it just happened to also be not a very particularly popular vice presidential nominee to try to offer that friendly face. But his favorability did go up. So I think the strategy did have some logic to it. Anyway, they were going back and forth, and I wanted the cordiality to end when it got to the issue of overturning the election results. Because JD Vance has been open. He said this on cable news, that if it was up to him, if he was in the position of Mike Pence on January 6th, he would not have allowed the election to be certified and finish the process. He would have sent it back down to the states. He would have sent it back down to the states where Trump was trying to make a push for a campaign to overturn the election results. He wanted it back down to the states because the state houses across the country were mostly controlled by Republicans. And Donald Trump obviously has a lot more leverage over Republicans than Democrats. And so if it was sent back down to the states, based off of the fraudulent electors that Donald Trump submitted, where people committed fraud and told the government, I am an elector, and scrawled it down on crayon on a piece of paper. The point of that was not to actually convince people in government that they were the electors. The point of it was to cause so much confusion about who was the elector or who wasn't the elector, or at least cause the concept of confusion so someone could say, oh, I don't know, I guess we got to send it back to the states, which are majority controlled by Republicans. And then the next stage starts, which is Donald Trump's intimidation campaign against these different state houses and the Republican side of it, saying, you are going to certify the election to show me being the winner. And where does he need to do that? He needs to do that in the state houses. Again, they're majority controlled by Republicans, and not a house that is not going to be as friendly because he didn't perform well in the 2018 midterms. So that was the plan. That was the plot. And when they stormed the Capitol on J6, he was sitting down there for 3 hours in the White House, watching it on his TV, drinking Diet Coke, having his boy calling the House. And I want to play now Hasan's version of events, and then we're going to talk about it, because while I agree with him that it was funny to some extent to watch people in with horns on their heads storm the Capitol building, I really don't think he fully understands the significance of the event or the threat it posed for our democracy. And if he does understand it, then I don't understand why then I don't understand, okay? I don't understand why he's not as concerned as the vast majority of the left are.
How we got to this point. But the issue was that happened.
So boring.
Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this.
I liked it. I want more January 6s. It was funny.
Censorship to stop
Give it up.
From doing
Give it up.
To kill someone,
we need more January 6s. It was very funny, objectively.
Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance, I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement, but this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say,
is your second
he is still
821?
saying
No.
he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that.
No, it's not.
Did he lose the 2020 election?
a bunch of fucking
focused on the
fat
future.
Republicans trying to climb over the Capitol wall,
speaking their mind in the wake
to
of
do
the
what? Take photos
COVID
and poop inside of
situation?
Nancy Pelosi's office?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer.
It was
for you to not
objectively
talk
funny.
about
Sorry.
censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it.
A lot of you are
further,
liars.
But you guys attack us.
You are lying to
for not
yourselves if you
believing
think
in
that wasn't
democracy,
fucking
the most
hilarious.
sacred right under the United States democracy.
The thing is, when I first saw this clip, I try to give the benefit of the doubt to everyone, right? Because obviously he doesn't take it as seriously as other people do, right? J6 and really, I don't really care as much about specifically just J6, but J6 as part of a grander plot. If you just look at J6 in isolation, then it would just, it would still be a bunch of people got hurt. You know, if you live in the DC area, having to be gated off of streets you walked your whole life, you know, that sucks. Not to mention just the increased security presence. And there's like still a bunch of things that are connected to it that's unpleasant and something maybe I know more of because I'm a DC area local. But in isolation, yeah, it was funny to see a bunch of strange individuals get themselves in strange situations, carrying around flagpoles, looting podiums with corns on it. Again, that is funny. That in of itself is funny. But as part of a grander plot, and a lot of the details of the day, when we talk about pipe bombs being placed out of like political organizations, now we still haven't caught the people who did that, which has been the basis of many theories online. I think that while it is funny, when you're the largest political streamer on Twitch, it might be important to include it in a bigger context so people just don't think it was a bunch of morons rolling around on the Capitol building crying out loud for Daddy Trump. But I probably wouldn't have done the segment if it was just this, right? But then I also saw this other clip where he explicitly downplayed the threat that was posed by January 6th and the plot to overturn the election.
Okay, January 6th is objectively funny, and one of the dumbest aspects of this entire process, like magically, we're just gonna forget if the ballot, if Mike Pence followed through on what Donald Trump wanted to do and just refused to fucking authorize the ballots, all of a sudden we're just gonna forget that an election took place. Like, get the fuck out of here. That's not gonna happen. It's ridiculous. Okay. They didn't even know what their goals were. They were just a bunch of fucking small business owners that were running around and ultimately just like took selfies inside of fucking rooms and shit and got maced. Okay. Yeah. You will never convince me that a bunch of fucking fat business owners trying to climb the walls of the goddamn Congress was not a hilarious moment. Okay. Anyway, I have to fact check you. January 6th was terrifying. Okay. Anyway, like, but regardless, it's just
occurred.
The amount of fucking right-wing posturing, coming from the Democratic Party, especially from a guy like Tim Walz, is really sad to see.
Now look, I'm a DC area local. The effect that's going to have on me, seeing smoke rising from that area, that, you know, my grandpa would take me to take your child to work day to the old Bureau of Engraving and Printing, and being able to walk the streets and see the Capitol, you know, maybe it means more for me than it probably means to other people. Putting that aside, he is downplaying the threat. He's not just saying it's funny, he's downplaying the threat. He's saying that he can laugh about it because there was no chance of it succeeding. It's like, it just doesn't really matter. It's just the goofy J6. And now the libertards are just focusing on it when they should be focusing on the real issues. You know, they should be focusing on the other stuff instead of this conservative, we're the real heroes of freedom and democracy stuff now. You know, I'm putting a few words in this mouth, but the general idea here is that it wasn't really that much of a threat. It was just kind of funny. And now you're being melodramatic about it. But he doesn't put any of this in context. And this is the only information he really provided people about. This is it. You can go dig through the rest of the VOD. You're not going to find some other big revelation here where he's like, well, yeah, when the Secretary of State of Georgia was intimidated and explains the whole plot. No, this is it. This is it. To his audience, as presented by the stream, January 6th was just when a bunch of rednecks got together, stormed the Capitol in Buffalo ears, grabbed a few things, later got beat up by the police, and then walked home before getting arrested one by one, plucked by the FBI. And it was goofy and funny to watch the whole time. Right? That's all it is. But if you include the wider context, when you include the fact that this was part of a larger campaign to intimidate public officials like the Secretary of State of Georgia to overturn the election results, the fraudulent submission of documents to try to make it so that Vice President of the United States could take it and send it back down to the states. I remember hearing all the time about the fascists in America, the fascist this, the fascist that. Does he think that Republicans, at that point, he can be certain that if it was sent back down to the states, that the Republicans would have showed bravery and they would have challenged Donald Trump in that moment? Maybe. I think there's even a good chance. But the problem is that was 4 years ago. A lot has happened in 4 years. Donald Trump crushed the opposition in the primary. Ron DeSantis, being Trump without all the baggage of Trump, flopped like crazy. Trump called him like, oh, you diddly your students, and that was it. It was done. Okay? A lot of people forget he said that, but yeah, he did say that on the campaign. He was insinuating it on Truth Social. He says a lot of crazy stuff on Truth Social. You should check that stuff out. But it's been 4 years. Now, the Republican Party has been molded into his party. Mitch McConnell is going to be out soon, and he's probably not going to be replaced by somebody that's a never Trumper or somebody who'd be more willing to stand up to Trump. Even though I'm no fan of Mitch McConnell, of course, he's going to probably be replaced by somebody, if Trump wins, that's going to be pretty in line with Trump. It's his party. He's the head of the party. He's been leading it for now over 9 years, going on 10. That's a lot of time to put in your own loyalists. Get out the old loyalists. The Republican Party, who heads it? Laura Trump. She's the co-chair, and it's all centered towards Donald Trump. Okay, the Republican Party in the House. They don't hold the Senate. They hold the House, and the old leadership of the Senate's on the way out. New one's on the way in. But about the House, who leads the House? Not Kevin McCarthy. He's gone. Not Tom Emmer. He got passed away. He wasn't far right enough. He wasn't right wing enough. Who ended up being the pick? Oh, Tom Emmer was because he's okay with gay marriage, by the way. It's part of the reason why he got turned over. It was Mike Johnson. Who led the effort to overturn the election in the House? It was Mike Johnson. It was Mike Johnson who led the effort to overturn the election in the House. So the party is led by Trump's family. The only the only body they control over legislature is headed by somebody who led the effort to overturn the election results. Donald Trump, still the same Donald Trump who tried to overturn the election results, if not more spiteful than ever, openly calling for the jailing of his political opponents, and since then has even called for the suspension of the Constitution, just make him president again, which is supposed to be like the simp document for the Republican Party. It's Lincoln's party, the grand old party. And who's the firewall that stopped him last time? Mike Pence? He's not there. He's gone. Why is he gone? Because he didn't show loyalty. Who is he replaced by? Not the most electable option. J.D. Vance was not a good pick from an electability standpoint. They were already going to win Ohio. You could try to advertise, his Midwest character to try to maybe win Michigan, but these are the states that they have the worst odds in anyway. And his favorability was doo-doo. He doesn't have much legislative experience. He's been in the Senate for 2 years, and there's a million different clips of him condemning Donald Trump from 4 years ago that are being shot out rapid fire by the Harris campaign. But he was picked anyway. Why was he picked? I think he was picked for loyalty. He went on national TV to said he would not be a guardrail on Trump. He would have voted to overturn the election. So you don't have the Mike Pence guardrail. The leader of the Republicans in the House led the effort to overturn the election. The Republican Party is now led by Trump's family. Trump is still Trump, and Mitch McConnell's on the way out. A lot has happened in 4 years. You give that man 4 more years in the White House, and he's 82 in office, and then one of his sons are running or someone else he wants to win, and we know he picked some pretty wild options, not very electable options. He has a bad Mark Robinson, Dr. Oz, Doc Hollywood. What about Carrie Lake, who's down 10 points? She's lost once, and now she's going to lose again. He picked the loser twice. Doug Mastriano. My goodness. We could keep going. I'm just saying the ones that are the most well known. So they lose. That guardrail and J.D. Vance is no longer there. And if J.D. Vance is the one running, well, even more reason to not overturn the election results. The party itself is led by his family. The person in the House that could still be in charge of the House if they keep it is somebody who helped lead the effort to overturn it last time. Hardcore Trump loyalist. He calls for, I mean, look what happened with the Ukraine aid. Oh, we have to do an immigration bill. Negotiates for 10 months. Trump says, kill it. Kills it like that. He says, jump. He says, how high? And we're going to say, oh, it's just a bunch of rednecks storming the Capitol. Who cares? Who cares? It's not, it's just funny, man. It's just funny. Just funny, man. It's just funny. By the way, those redneck, like, who cares, whatever. Those guys, they said they want to pardon. So Trump, when we talk about those people, he is, in my opinion, endorsing their behavior by saying he wants to pardon them. If he's saying that he does not deserve to do time in office, I mean, time in prison, time in jail, what signal does that send from the stand back and stand by guy? What signal does that send? The guy who calls every election rigged in advance. I mean, Steve Bannon said openly that the plan was to call it rigged, say that they won it, or say that they got the election, it's over, they won anyway, before the results had even been called. We have so much information on this, and we're only going to get more as time goes on, in my mind. So for him to just like downplay it like this, I think that's irresponsible. I think it's ignorant. And I think that for him, that's just a bunch of goofy, fat rednecks climbing up the steps of the Capitol, and he doesn't see it as part of a bigger picture, a bigger plot. It's like looking at the Watergate scandal as a simple breaking and entering. It's devoid of context, devoid of all the information that makes it the scandal that it was. So yes, if you reduce it to just the day's events, and also ignore like some of the other impacts of the day's events, but if you just concentrate on the day's events and only what happened in the Capitol, not what happened with his lackeys like Rudy Giuliani, not what Trump's lack of action and what his lack of action could have implied, but what he was going over, I think he painted a terrible picture here. I don't know if this is just due to him being ignorant. Maybe he does know about this and he also just doesn't care. Maybe he doesn't value the same like institutions that I do. But the thing is, like, maybe this is just these institutions are here and we take them for granted. You know, he was born and I was born into a world where we had elections in the United States. We're going to continue to have elections, hopefully, in the United States. That's the view for most people. And so we kind of take it, oh yeah, this institution, we have it, and we kind of take it for granted. Just because we have it now doesn't mean we'll have it forever. There have been many democracies that have backslid. We're seeing backsliding in Hungary. We're seeing backsliding in Turkey. We're seeing backsliding in India. We're seeing backsliding in many of the world's democracies. Hell, India is the world's largest democracy. Are we above all of that? Are we so like imbued with the spirit of democracy that there's no way that we could ever like throw it off or say no, we're I just think that out of all the reactions we could have had to this, just giggle at it and call it goofy, that's one thing. But to downplay it and say it's not really a threat, to me, either indicates he has no idea what the threat even was. He's a man completely out of his element, not even able to identify what is before his eyes, or he just doesn't care. Which one's worse? I do not know. Hasan has said that Jan 6ers deserve jail. Okay. That's still not like I can, if I say that somebody trying to overthrow the government deserves jail, but then downplay the threat of the attempt to overthrow the government, I mean, how much credit do you want for that? I don't know. And it's a big motivator. It's a big motivator for Democrats. It's something that does get them motivated. When I was canvassing in Ohio, it was something that got them motivated to get out. It was something that some people told me I'm going out there just to vote against them to defend. It is a motivator. It is, like the debate said, if he was watching the same debate I was, it's like the third biggest issue this election. We got like inflation in the economy, immigration, and the third one is like our democracy, the state of our democracy. The #1 political streamer on Twitch, Hasanabi,